Hi there, and welcome along to episode 130 of the Gersnet Podcast, a totally independent Rangers show made by fans for fans, where the content is always absolutely free. And as we all know by now, it's not just the podcast that we have here at Gersnet, but if you head over to the website at www.gersnet.co.uk, you can also see all the great free content we have over there, including match previews, reviews, articles, a history archive, and a very, very friendly discussion forum. So please do head to the website and get involved. If you're joining us live tonight, it's just gone 9:30 on Friday, the 14th of March. You're very, very welcome. Please do give us your questions and your comments, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. Otherwise, as always, the pod is available for download on a Monday morning, and that's iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Please do give us a wee like, a subscribe, and a comment if you're feeling generous. My name is Ross Bennett. I'm going to be your Gersnet podcast host this afternoon. And joining me, we've got two of the old guard, two of the original guests of the Gersnet show. They've been with us for a couple of years, ever since we started up a few years back. First up, we have David Fraser. David, a very warm welcome back to you. How are you feeling after the first week of 55?
Basking, Ross. Basking. How are you doing? It's been a while.
It has been a while. I don't think that you've been on with a camera show yet. So how are you sort of finding seeing myself and Frankie as well as just hearing us?
Oh, I've not taken part in a camera show, but I have seen your glowing Chevy Chases before, and when I've been listening back to the podcast as a listener.
Excellent.
So no shocks here.
Excellent. Well, David, how did you? I hear you had a tough weekend celebrating, but I hope that you managed to at least enjoy the Rangers result last Saturday, and then Celtic dropping points on Sunday to finally get us over the line after a very long wait.
Most definitely, Ross. It's been a long time coming. Yeah, I mean, you could say that the champagne was on ice for a number of weeks, but getting over the line was, it was. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a relief. It was just elation at getting it done. And as the manager's been saying there, just to finally go over the line was very, very good. So, yeah, but I echo the manager's sentiments. We're in a great position to go and build on the success we've achieved this season, and obviously the season is far from concluded, so onwards and upwards.
Aye, absolutely. Still plenty to fight for this year. And also joining us tonight is the chief of Gersnet himself, Stuart Franklin. Frankie, have you recovered from last Sunday's festivities? Yeah, it's been a fun week. And sometimes, you sort of find yourself pinching yourself that it's finally happened, 10 years of waiting for this. And sometimes certainly in the last 6 or 7 years, where this week looked so remote, so far away, but to get it over the line and not just sort of drag it over the line, but to steamroller this season, get it done by early March. It's been a very, very enjoyable week. But as we say, there's still plenty to play for this year, to build on the success that we've already had. Scottish Cup, we think, is coming back at some point, but first and foremost in all of our minds now is the Europa League. And David, we came back to face the current leaders of the Czech League, the Czech Republic League, Slavia Prague, who obviously dispatched of Leicester quite professionally in the last round, and definitely looked like something we've discussed on this show a number of times this season. Another slow start. Rangers not really at the races, and Prague took full advantage of that, knocking the ball around nicely, spreading it wide, making us run, and finally, after 7 or 8 minutes, getting a very, very nice opening goal. Like I say, they capitalised on our slow start. And do you think, David, there's any chance that the festivities of the weekend, the celebrations that we saw Saturday and Sunday, might have had maybe a wee lingering effect on the players?
I'd be amazed if they didn't, Ross. I think when Rangers go into action in the Europa League, especially after the hiatus since before Christmas, I think that there's an initial shock to the system when teams actually come out against Rangers and try to get on the ball and try to dictate tempo. So obviously that takes a bit of while, a few minutes to get used to. I mean, it doesn't matter how much classroom work and how many team talk minutes are spent in the dressing room priming you for that. It can be difficult to adjust to the pace of the opposition, especially if you've never played them before. So, but undoubtedly, I would imagine there'll be a few cobwebs as a result of being out in the lash for a couple of days at least in the lead up to the game. So, that said, though, I thought that after the initial quarter an hour, 20 minutes or so, I thought that Rangers, reasonably adjusted to the game and managed to keep the Czechs at bay for a period until up to the half-time whistle. So, it was pretty good. I would say that the performance in the second half was something like the Rangers we've came to expect, but again, I would, without being too far forward into the future, I think that Rangers have performed better. I think that Rangers were run about par, maybe slightly under par in terms of their performance. I think there's more to come this Thursday, and hopefully they've had a good week leading into it.
Aye, and having no game this weekend, I imagine, is ideal preparation for Gerrard anyway, to maybe allow them a couple of days off and not have to worry about a match and fatigue and players getting knocks and really go into it, because Europe is now number one priority for the rest of the season to get one stage further than we did last year. There's more money for that. There's more prestige. So yeah, hopefully there's the lack of a game this weekend has been good preparation for that. Frankie, the opener from Slavia, I thought was a lovely finish, but the boy who scored that goal was in acres of space. Now there's been some talk that maybe Hadji had lost his man, and you could see him making a dart and run back to try and get a block in, but it was just too late. Was there anything maybe that we could have done differently from a defensive perspective to try and prevent that goal?
So I'm muted. Hopefully this will help. This time I don't know why it's not working. Let's see. Fingers crossed. Can you still hear me, guys? Yeah.
I can hear you. Yeah.
I don't know what the.
Shall I jump to David?
Jump to David, and I'll have a look at this. The best thing. Thank you.
Fabulous. Well, David, one of the things that struck me, and it really chimes with what Frankie's saying there, was the first 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes. It felt to me like Nathan Patterson was exposed and was maybe struggling, and it felt like, if I'm the Slavia coach, I'm doing my homework on the opposition, and Nathan Patterson, rightly or wrongly, as the 19-year-old who's just come into the side defensive cover, he's the one that I'm going to exploit. But he seemed to grow into the game, and Gerrard, gave his BT press conference afterwards and said that tonight was the night that Nathan Patterson became a man. What did you make of his performance on Thursday, David?
I thought he was very good, Ross. Like yourself, it was pretty obvious that the Czech coach had pinpointed a youngster as possibly being a weakness in the Rangers lineup, and I think that the Rangers midfield, even allowing for the cobwebs aforementioned, the extra man that the Czechs had in the middle of the park in terms of switching the play, obviously posed a problem to the Rangers midfield insofar as there was more distance to cover in order to shut players down and to help the likes of Nathan Patterson to double up on spare men that would be receiving the ball from the player that was in possession of the ball. The management obviously tweaked that at half time, and that aided in Rangers getting more of a foothold in the game in the second half. But to get back to Nathan, I like what I see. Last season, the youth side were playing in the youth league, the UEFA Youth League. They played Atletico Madrid at Firhill, and I went up to Firhill and watched them play, and Rangers get hammered that day. They didn't cover themselves in glory. Certainly the first 15-20 minutes of that game, and Nathan Patterson, was watching him quite closely because he was obviously getting mentioned. He was starting to break into first team squads, and I thought that I maybe saw maybe chinks at armour in his game, obviously from a fan's perspective, but he looks to have come on leaps and bounds in that 12-month period since. He looks as if he is more concentrated from a defensive perspective. We saw last week against Antwerp how proficient he is in terms of being confident on the ball going forward. The way he took his goal was very, very good. And I think, believe it or not, that his misdemeanour and his with the COVID situation may well actually help him, in the immediate term, because it's obviously got him more concentrated on the opportunity that he's got. I strongly suspect that he's been working 3 times as hard in training to try and make up for his error in judgment. And I like what I see. I think that there's, as the manager's alluded to, and I'm not just saying this because the manager's saying it, there's aspects of his game you can see the bare bones that they've got stuff to work with, and you can see why the management have saw fit to let go experienced players and promote him to be James Tavernier's backup. And I think as long as he keeps his feet in the ground, and as I said, the COVID suspension is obviously going to help in that. Become concentrated, and he's in the right place in terms of the coaching staff, being able to develop players' games. That we've got a track record of that. Then the only way is up for Nathan Patterson, and I don't feel that there's too much of a weakness in the side when he's there, because he's capable. I think there's more to come from the boy. So
yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think, whilst it did seem for the first half at least he was targeted by Slavia, they never got too much change out of him. And he's holding his own as an 18-year-old lad who's come in without a great deal of first team experience, and he's holding his own in the last 16 of European competition against the runaway leaders of a league that's comparable to ours, I suppose, but a team that's already put out a very difficult side in Leicester City. So a difficult first 15-20 minutes maybe, but overall a very mature and composed performance. Frankie, hopefully your sound issues are sorted and we can hear your insight on the Rangers goal. So it comes after 36 minutes, and in my opinion a wee bit out of the blue, but when Rangers get these free kicks, maybe 35 yards out of the box, slightly off to one side, we've had so much joy from the ball being cut across the face and someone like Goldson knocking it in. Now, we might have got a wee bit of luck with this one, with the ball taking a couple of ricochets and coming across, but it struck me as some excellent awareness and endeavour from Hadji to get to that ball first, to knock it across for a very simple tap-in from Hollander. What did you make of the goal?
First of all, apologies for the sound issues, folks. Hopefully this is working now. There's a couple of settings that I have to play about with in Streamlabs, and clearly I was choosing the wrong one. In terms of the goal, I think obviously Morelos won an excellent free kick to begin with, and that's really important because we were struggling to get into the game and struggling to keep the ball up at that end of the park, and so it was vital to try and get Morelos into the match, and it was the same with Kent and Hadji, and I was pleased that Hadji managed to create it as well with the cutback, because he wasn't having a good game at all. There's a few players seemed to have an issue with their footwear. He kept slipping, and he was really struggling. His mobility, as we discussed already, he was kind of partly at fault for the opening goal, I would say, for Slavia. But as usual, we're very, very lucky. We've got Tav normally, clearly he's injured at the minute, but Borna always puts in good balls, and that one was a wee bit flatter. It was just over Morelos' head, or possibly the defender in front of Morelos got a touch, and like you mentioned, we got a wee bit lucky with the ricochet, but all credit to Hadji, who chased it down. I mean, it looked like it was going out, and it certainly looked like there was nothing wrong, but for him to be able to stick a leg out, cut it back, and create the tap in for Helander really was great going. And as you mentioned, it did come out of nothing. I think if we're honest, and it did allow us to get a foothold into the game after that. And I think Slavia, who dominated that first sort of 35 minutes, from there on didn't look quite as confident as they did, because they knew that we still carried a threat, and I think it helped our confidence. And it was great to go in at half time 1-1, because I think if we're all honest, we kind of struggled in that first half. So it was good that the second half was a lot better in every respect. And as our regular listeners will know, we had John Davis on from the Slavia Prague youth department in our preview for the game, and I was talking to him after the match, and I think I made that point. I think that the best thing for us was we didn't play well at all last week. In periods here or there we did in the second half, but I think it's probably the main positive for us going into next week's return leg is the fact that we surely can't play any worse than we did on Thursday. And it was quite a surprise to me, actually, because it was our midfield where we struggled, especially for the first half. It was Aribo, Davis and Kamara were all very, very poor. Kamara had his worst game in a long time, actually, and as I was saying before I got cut off earlier, that was a main problem in the first half. Kamara was kind of struggling on that right hand side, and we were leaving Patterson a bit exposed, and they were going direct and into that channel, and it was or switching the play, and we were struggling to cope with that. And it was good to see us adjust at half time, and that's one of the big benefits we've got with Mick Beale and the rest of the coaching staff. We're able to change things when it's not happening, and that's what happened last week. And I'm kind of hoping that a full week of preparation, no beer this time, no celebrations, obviously, and I think I'm hoping it'll be a very different second leg from our point of view, at least.
No, I think you're right. It's interesting, Frankie. We've spoken a few times on this show about Kamara being a big game player, and I think certainly in Europe over the last 2 years he's really shown his value. And I think when Kamara in Europe doesn't play well, the team suffers for it. And I think we did on the first half hour, 35 minutes on Thursday. Kamara couldn't string passes together. He looked short of confidence, but he grew into the game as well. And second half, the whole dynamic of the game changed. Now, David, Frankie's sort of referenced Mick Beale there and some changes that were made, and I know that this has been discussed by Steven Gerrard after the game. But what really do you think was it that changed at half time that allowed Rangers to play with a bit more confidence or a bit more freedom? And why is it that there was such a change as we went into the second half of the game?
Well, the manager said that he went two up top and played with one number 10. So leaving that extra player to start slightly deeper obviously created a headache for the Slavia players. They had an extra man for a lot of, as I mentioned previously, when they were switching play with quite regularly in the first half, they had that extra man, and because the likes of Glenn Kamara, as Frankie was saying there, was struggling to shuffle across with that extra distance to carry. to get across to help out Nathan Patterson. That had to be plugged at half time, and obviously the management tweaked it. Joe Aribo, started deeper in the second half, and that helped to have more bodies in the middle of the park where they could recycle the ball and get a feel for it and take the sting out of the Slavia side. Another thing was that, I was saying to my brother as we were watching it, that the pace that Slavia were playing at, it was difficult to maintain that intensity and aggression for 90 minutes, even 60 minutes. Some teams that they play at severe pace, I think, back to Jurgen Klopp's Borussia Dortmund side, and his Liverpool side here maybe about 18 months ago, were playing at a ferocious pace. And typically these sides, super fit athletes can maybe last an hour, 65 minutes, maybe 70 minutes tops, and then they start to tail off. So that extra man in the middle of the park allowed Rangers to get their foot in the ball more, build more attacks, and so the Slavia players had more defensive running to do, and probably hastened their tiredness and their drop off in intensity. So that helped. And as we've said previously, that Rangers played pretty poorly, considering how we've been used to them playing of late, especially in Europe. But I think tactically, I think now that they've seen the Slavia team up close, I think the manager mentioned there that they've identified a couple of weaknesses that they can exploit in the return leg at Ibrox, and I think they may well see a different game. I just hope that in the league, this week leading up to the game, that everybody that's fit and available has got a clean bill of health, and that we train well, we don't pick up any injuries in training, touch wood, and that we had top form. I think if we play as well as we can, I think we'll see a different second leg as opposed to the first leg.
Yeah, and I think that obviously, the importance of the away goal, we don't even need to speak about that. I mean, it's so crucial to giving Rangers a bit of comfort. And you think back to our European run to the UEFA Cup final in 2008, the importance of away goals that year. We know all about that. So getting that goal and then keeping it tight and not conceding again, I think puts us in such a strong position. From what was probably, before, when the draw was made, this was probably a 50-50 tie. And in my opinion, the result on Thursday puts it more 60-40, 65-35, because of that away goal, and because of then the second half, the dynamic changed. We go to the two up top with the one number 10. It stops Slavia from playing with a certain freedom. But Frankie, it could have been also different were it not for Alan McGregor in the 89th minute. And I'm coming to you deliberately because you played to a very high level as a goalkeeper yourself. What were your thoughts on McGregor's save, and just how difficult do you think that would have been to pull off?
Well, I think my tweet immediately after the game probably said it all. I mean, what I said was forget everything else that happened that night. Just enjoy and take in that save. That's one of the best saves you'll ever see. I mean, people are saying, is it the best ever save you've seen? Possibly. I mean, I think every save is different. McGregor said that himself in his interview after the game. There's different saves, there's different goals. You can't say one goal is better than another goal. There's so many different ways you can score, so many different ways you can save. But it was fantastic. I mean, it was a great cross. The guy let the proverbial salmon, and I thought they'd scored. Simple as that. And for McGregor to get a cross and not only stop it from going in, but to hold it was just stunning, absolutely stunning. I mean, there's an element of luck involved. I think another time he could save that, he could knock it round, it could come off his knees and could end back up in the net quite easily. It could have came off him, it could have went in, but this time he saved it, and it was absolutely incredible. And you could see, I think one of their strikers, they were celebrating. They thought they'd scored, and right away had to put his arms right back down just because he had managed to keep it out. And I'm still I'm still watching it. Actually, this afternoon I was watching a game because I knew it was on the night, and it's just a fantastic bit of goalkeeping. I mean, I've been lucky enough. I'm in my mid-40s now, and I was lucky enough to see sort of Chris Woods play. Obviously, Andy Gorham, Stefan Klos, McGregor in his first spell, McGregor again now, and we've been really spoilt with the goalkeepers we've had, and every one of those names I've just mentioned have all had great saves. I remember Chris Woods, I forget the Hibs player it was, but I remember there was one game at Ibrox, a save he made was just out of this world. It was going to top corner, and I still don't know how he saved it. Gorham clearly had, you could pick 2 or 3 great saves. The Van Hooijdonk one's probably the most famous one. At Ibrox, the actual, fun enough, the one that saved the penalty for Hooijdonk in the Van Vossen miss game was probably just as good from my point of view, and was probably quite similar to McGregor's during the week there. I mean, and McGregor himself, obviously, he's got a great record, a great top class saves. I mean, the Werder Bremen one is as good as you'll ever see, but this one for me just had everything. For a 39-year-old guy to react, first of all, that quickly, then to have the agility to get across and save it is just fantastic. And then he gets bonus marks for his interview after the game, which was absolutely fantastic. It was just, I couldn't stop laughing. The guy is great quality in terms of playing a straight bat, and it was fantastic. And as I say, we just need to enjoy these moments. I mean, if you told me at the start of the season not only would we win the league, but we'd have the goal of the season with Kemar Roof and the save of the season with McGregor, then I'd probably laugh at you. It's just great, and I think we just keep enjoying these moments as they happen, and I just hope there's more to come over the next couple of months.
His interview after was spectacular. The way he kind of downplays it and just says, well, you stick a hand out and you hope that it doesn't go in, and it, this time it didn't, as if that was all there was to it. I mean, the pace at which he throws himself down, again, considering 39 years of age, you'd expect him to be past his peak, but he just seems to be getting better and better. And David, the question that then everyone is immediately asking after the game is, well, does that beat his Bremen save? Which obviously, same competition, one round later, I think, when we played against Bremen. But where do you come down on that debate?
That's a hard one, Ross. Frankie's kind of stole my thunder a wee bit here. I've seen some phenomenal saves for Rangers goalkeepers. I think when Stuart was answering your question there, I was thinking, how would I answer that question? I think that the Werder save, obviously it was a very tense game. It was a close tie, but given that the juncture in the game where McGregor pulls off the save on Thursday night, with a couple of minutes to go, though it had been, as you're watching it in real time, you thought the ball was behind him, and then you're expecting the ball to trundle over the line or hit the back of the net, and then you think, oh, he's actually managed to pull it, claw it back. I think the magnitude of it, his age, that comes into it. I mean, his footwork for it was exceptional. I'm sure Stuart will concur with me there that that's for a guy's age, his level of professionalism is very, very good. As we've said there, Stuart and I, being a similar age, we've been fortunate to see some top class Rangers goalkeepers. Not that, I mean, there was other backup keepers that weren't mentioned that were tidy as well. Anthony Yemi, Lionel Charbonnier, good goalkeepers. And that save the other night, I mean, Ali McCoist and Alan Hutton waxed lyrical about it, and rightly so. But if you were to put me in this spot, and I'm not going to sit on the fence here, the save against Werder was phenomenal. To touch that up onto the bar was incredible. But we live in the moment, so I'm just going to come down marginally on the side of the Slavia Prague, especially given his age, his level of professionalism, and his anticipation, his instinct, just everything that you can coach as a goalkeeper. If Alan Hodgkinson was I'm assuming Alan's still with us. He may not actually, given his age, but everything you would coach a goalkeeper and all the instincts that you would want as a natural, from a goalkeeping perspective, were on display with that save on Thursday night. It was absolutely, truly world class.
Just to cut in, sorry Ross, I know you'll get coming. I want to spend a bit more time on. Not often we get to talk about goalkeepers, so as a fully paid up member of the Goalkeepers Union, I just want to mention one of my favourite saves in the last sort of 20 years, actually, believe it or not, was Steve Simonson. I think it was 2014 away to Forfar, and he made an absolutely incredible save. It was also, I think, for a corner, possibly a free kick, and he was going one way and the ball deflected off one of the defenders or their striker, and he had to come back across and claw it out the top corner. You can see it on YouTube. I think I've seen it on YouTube in the last few days somewhere, and it's one of the best saves I've ever seen for a Rangers goalkeeper. So it's always fashionable to name something for Gorham or McGregor or Kloss or whoever. Steve Simonson is honestly in my top 5 saves ever. He's there, which is probably a bit of surprise for our listeners, so you can all have a wee chuckle at that.
I was thinking as you were rattling off all the great goalkeepers we had, Woods, Gorham, Kloss, McGregor, and then I got to thinking, between the two McGregor spells, Steve Simonson, Cammy Bell, I mean, we had some real shockers, I think. So it's nice for Steve Simonson to get a mention in a positive sense, because he wasn't the best Rangers goalkeeper we've ever had, and got pulled up for gambling offences while he was with us as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I can't quite remember, but I remember the game he had a nightmare was the Dundee United, was it semi-final or the quarter-final? We played Dundee United at Ibrox, and I think we were getting beat 2-1 at that point anyway, and he gave away a cheap goal late on, a bad try to pass the ball out. So there was better aspects to his time at the club. So Steve, if you're listening, or if you've got a pal listening, we still remember you fondly, big man.
Absolutely. So David, look, we go into Thursday hopefully well rested and hopefully well trained. How do you approach this game? Because we've got the away goal, probably puts us slightly in the driving seat, but we saw from the first 30 minutes just how dangerous Slavia can be. What's the ethos from Rangers here? Do we go for it? Do we try and keep sound, knowing that if we can keep a clean sheet, we're through? How would you approach this?
Difficult one, Ross. I think Stevie obviously said that he wanted to take a bit of responsibility in terms of being culpable for the tactics on Thursday night, saying that the team was waiting for things to happen. He uses that phrase quite often. He doesn't like his teams to wait. So, given that he said that, you could be forgiven for presuming that he's going to try and force the issue early on. But I mean, let's be honest here. Rangers defensively in the Europa League haven't been that great. I think if there's any foibles in the Rangers team, they seem to be exposed in the Europa League, where the concentration levels require to be a wee bit higher. So that said, though, they did manage to batten down the hatches in Prague last week. So if they can remain concentrated, it's you're saying there about the tie being slightly in our favour. Definitely, we've got an advantage. Leicester obviously went there and they got a 0-0 draw and came unstuck at home. So we do have the slight advantage, but therein lies the rub, to be stick or twist. I think Gerrard, being a positive coach, generally speaking, will look to impose our game play and style on the Czechs. Kamar Roof's obviously come on for a cameo. He's going to be fit again, presumably. He's going to come through the week of training unscathed. So that's a card up Stevie's sleeve with regards to something that the Czechs might not necessarily be used to from last week. So I would like to think that we'd go into it with a positive approach, but we've got to keep the back door closed, and we've got to remain concentrated. There was, if any criticism could be levelled at the side last week, and there'll be some listeners they'll probably be looking and thinking, "Oh, here he goes." But I thought the defending for the header that McGregor pulled off the fantastic save was abysmal. I thought they were ball watching. You could see it was at the end of the game. You know, they were tired. They're mentally tired with their exertions and celebrating. You know, that mental energy being expended is, you know, it takes its toll. So you could cut them a bit of slack, but I thought that the defending was really, really poor for that chance. So if they can remain switched on and totally, you know, make what I've just said there, you render that moot, then I think, look, we're at home. We've got everything to play for. The Czechs need to score, so they're going to come out. It's going to be entertaining, and if we can keep them at bay, hopefully dictate the play in terms of ball possession, ball retention, chance creation, all the usual platitudes. If we can play the way we've been playing and remain concentrated and switched on at the back, then if we can get a goal in the first half and build upon that, or even better if it were to come about, then hopefully, fingers crossed, then we might have a good night on Thursday night.
Let's hope so. Frankie, as David referenced there, Leicester go to Prague, they get a 0-0 draw, and then they get turned over at home. What lessons do you think Steven Gerrard will have taken from that in terms of his preparation for the return leg on Thursday?
Well, I think, first of all, clearly Slavia is a dangerous team. I mean, we learnt that on Thursday, and I'd like to think that there won't be any complacency from us in that respect. It took a big effort, a very big effort, and it took a superhuman save for us to get a draw. So I think we're more than aware of the threat that they carry. I mean, they've got one defender suspended. I think Zima got booked in the first leg, so he's out. But they've got another capable defender in Delhi who's on loan for Bruges, I think, to come in. So I don't think they'll change their team too much. We've got options. Obviously, Roof is nearing fitness. I very much doubt he'll start, but he should be able to play a bigger part in the game. And it was one positive I took for Thursday is he didn't play for very long, Roof, but I thought he did quite well when he came on, certainly compared to when he last played before he got off injured against Antwerp. We had actually a bit of a nightmare of a game. But he looked a lot better and a lot fitter and sharper on Thursday in his short cameo. The key player might be Ryan Jack, though, if we can get him available. I think by all accounts he was quite close to travelling across to Prague for the first leg, but the manager decided to sort of wrap him up in cotton wool and keep him for Thursday. So if he's obviously fit and training and available, again, I'm not entirely convinced he'll start. But the manager might think it's worthwhile. I mean, this is the good thing we've got now. The league's won, so we can afford to pick and choose what games we play certain players in. And obviously, we want to try and go unbeaten. Clearly, we want to beat Celtic next week, next Sunday as well. So we've got that game to think about. But now we've got to think about progression in Europe. That's the next step. Not just for us, we can have a laugh at Celtic and them having a bad season in Europe, but if Scottish football wants to progress, if Rangers want to progress as a football club, then we need to do well in Europe, and we need to try and win next week and go through. I mean, the Ukrainian teams obviously both got beat last week and both look like they're out. So if we can go through, then it means we're automatically, or whoever wins the title next season's automatically in the group stages of the Champions League for 2022-23. So hopefully that'll benefit us. Hopefully we'll win the title again next year, and we'll make the most of that. But even so, it'd be good for us to take other Scottish teams with us. Their form this year in Europe is fantastic, and I'm kind of hoping now it's Slavia that's worried. We can definitely look at what they did against Leicester. I mean, I think Leicester had a few players missing. Obviously, James Maddison didn't play, and he's a key player for them. Rodgers hasn't done fantastically well in Europe, didn't do fantastically well at Liverpool or when he was at Celtic. So, again, maybe we can take a positive for that. It's a shame we won't have 50,000 supporters next week, but we are more than capable of going through, and we are very slight favourites now, I would say. but it is very, very tight. It could go. I mean, could go down to the wire. It could go to extra time quite easily. David's right. Our defending hasn't been fantastic lately. I mean, I would make one slight exception to that in the Antwerp game. I think the reason we conceded so many goals is because although we weren't exactly gung-ho, we were attacking a lot ourselves, and I think we've seen that as their weakness. So I think that's why we were probably a wee bit more open at the back than we normally would be. I think the manager might shut the door a wee bit in that respect on Thursday. He might well bring Arfield back in, drop Hadj out and stick Aribo further forward and go with that sort of familiar, sort of, I wouldn't say defensive setup, but more of the sort of medium block and a more sort of conservative team, and just play our way into the game. And we definitely need to start the game stronger. And if we can get one goal up, I think I'd be fairly confident that we can get through. That being said, there's a lot of football to be played, and they're a very good team. And I don't think their strikers actually played that well on Thursday, and they'll be looking to improve in that aspect. So we'll just have to wait and see. It is very, very tight, but Slavia was a good draw, and we got a great result last week. So I'm really hoping we can make the most of that on Thursday and take the game to the aim and show what we're all about and get ourselves into the last eight, which would be another fantastic achievement.
Absolutely. And you're right, Slavia was a good draw. You look at the 15 other teams in that draw that we could have got. Slavia would have been probably in most people's top five, definitely maybe top three, alongside sort of Molde and teams like that. So a lot of football still to be played, probably just about shading it as favourites now. The game obviously is on Thursday at 8 o'clock. Gersnet will have a preview show hopefully on Wednesday, so please do tune into that and we can discuss a wee bit more then. Gents, before we go on, we'll look at some of the other bits and pieces floating around Scottish football land in a minute, but allow me to just mention one of the partners that we have here at Gersnet. Tonight's show is in association with footballprizes.co.uk. If you head over to that website, we've mentioned them a few times now. There's a couple of prizes on offer for Rangers fans at the moment, including a signed photo of Marvin Andrews and Nacho Novo from Helicopter Sunday, and a signed Lorenzo Amoruso shirt up for bids as well. As always, really nicely framed and presented. All you have to do is head over to the website at footballprizes.co.uk and buy tickets to enter. Otherwise, keep your eyes on the Gersnet Twitter feed to get involved. Right, moving on. David, this week, or actually I think in the last sort of 24, 48 hours, Rangers kind of finally released a statement addressing the SFA report on historic child abuse within the Scottish game. And Rangers came in for a lot of criticism for not addressing the topic. You know, a number of clubs were implicated in that report that was issued, three weeks ago now, perhaps. And Rangers' silence was criticised probably by the usual suspects and exactly who we thought would criticise Rangers. But a statement has now been made, and we'll come on to the content of that in a moment. But, you know, firstly, David, is there any excuse for a delay of 3 or 4 weeks before we get this statement out there?
I guess it depends on your point of view. I think if hand in heart, I know pregnant pauses here, Ross, which I apologise for. I don't really blame the club for taking time to digest the contents of the report and having a measured response. If there was any criticism that could possibly be attached, was that there's maybe, you know, an extended period which you could maybe question. That said, though, we've got to remember that, you know, an important business at hand in terms of playing, and that's not to distract from any of the seriousness of the situation. So, no, I think that the club have sought to take their time to get through it with a fine-tooth comb, and, as I say, release a measured response. And I think that the statement basically does that. I think, you know, Rangers were going to be criticised whether they issued a statement 5 minutes after the report was made public, or whether it was 5 weeks after they made it public. So I think it's a case of, you know, Rangers, as we've sadly seen in the last week, certainly in Holyrood, are too, all too easily painted as a bogeyman. Sometimes, our collective support maybe don't help the situation, but I don't think that can be brought in this instance. I think it was just a case of Rangers would have been criticised no matter what they did. So, but I'm glad that the club have come out and released a statement and they've addressed it, and obviously we'll go into the content of it in due course. But yeah, it's I think a lot of fans have welcomed the statement that's been released recently.
Yeah, the criticism around timing for me, and obviously, posing the question in that way, is there any excuse? I'm sort of playing devil's advocate a wee bit because, in my opinion, the criticism that Rangers have received from that is no better than, the point scoring that people have tried to make from this whole issue. And you've had the people that were criticising Rangers for a delayed statement were the same people who were very, very quick to claim you're trying to score points by bringing up historic child abuse. How dare you use that to try and demean a club or be superior about which club you support? To me, that's exactly what people have done with this issue, is score points over who managed to get their statement out first, regardless of what that statement actually said. And to me, that's just in exceptionally bad taste. It really is. Frankie, the actual content of the statement I thought was very, very carefully and deliberately put together. The approach that Rangers seem to take is to quite explicitly apologise for what went on and also clarify the extent of Rangers' involvement in these issues, which I think it is only right that Rangers set themselves apart from other, maybe more implicated institutions in Scottish football. What did you make of the actual construction of that statement?
Yeah, I was quite happy with it. I'm not convinced that statement needed 4 weeks to be written. I think it could have came out a wee bit quicker. However, we're not privy to other things that are happening in the background. Obviously, there's legal conversations going on. There's conversations with the football authorities, etc., etc. So it's easy for us to sit and complain and say that we should have had something out, an apology out, or compensation paid, or whatever you want to mention. You could say that should have been done within days or within a week. We don't know exactly what happens, but at the end of the day, the statement seems to be clear enough. I think it's fair enough. It's measured enough. It's mentioned the fact that we had a problem with one guy who came to us from another club, who the other club did not appear to deal with what happened there well enough, and we ended up with this nasty person in our club, and eventually their complaint was made and we dealt with it, and I'm glad to see that's what happened. I'd like to think, and the content about if there is any issues between what happened pre-2012 and post-2012, that Rangers I'll be happy to deal with that. I was pleased to read that, with the point being made at the same time that clearly other clubs have other entities as well which they're trying to separate themselves from, which looks dubious to me. The apology was good. The apology didn't limit itself to anybody that's had issues with Rangers. It apologised to everybody that's suffered for this horrible situation, whatever club or wherever country they're in, and I'm glad that Rangers broadened that out, and I'm glad they said that, and I think that actually one of the biggest positives since the statements came out is obviously Rangers have put together or offered counselling for anybody that wants to take up on that. They've organised a trauma counsellor for any person that thinks they were affected by this issue, that they can get in contact with the club and they'll put them in contact with this person, whereby they can raise what happened to them. And I think at the end of the day, it's the victims that we have to think about here. There's been far too many people involved in this. I mean, I wrote an editorial for the Gersnet website a month ago when the original statement came out, or sorry, the original report came out for the SFA, and I mean, I played football in the late 80s, early 90s, and thankfully I never witnessed anything like that at all, but clearly it happened. It happened at other clubs. It happened at clubs that I played at. It happened at Hutchison Vale, and that's where Gordon Neely was involved. He was also at Dundee United. I was at Dundee United. These things, as I say, as I said in that statement, they're but for the grace of God. It could have been me that this could have happened to. So, as far as I'm concerned, everything that can be done to help these people should be done, and it doesn't matter what football team they played for, what incarceration football team they played for. We need to help them, and I'm glad that Rangers have taken that step, have apologised, and they're willing to deal with it going forward.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that we don't want to labour the point on this too much. The statements out there, Rangers are taking ownership of the parts that they need to take ownership for. But what I particularly like is that they are signposting people where to go for help, regardless of whether this is a Rangers issue, whether this is a Scottish football issue, a global football issue, and global sports issue, really. Rangers want to sort of play their part in making all of this right. We've detailed the extent of our involvement in what went on in the past, but I've clearly said, regardless of your experience, this is where you can go to get help. And Rangers seem to want to take a starring role in that. So I think, to me, that's the right thing for Rangers to do. That shows that they want to be a responsible organisation, a leader in this way, not try and separate out what might have happened under a different corporate structure, which would do in a very, very easy way out for Rangers. So yeah, I think the statement, whether it came at the right time or not, the actual content and the approach that they've taken is to be commended, I think. Right, David, we'll just wrap up in a few minutes, but one of the other things I want to talk about tonight is the build up to the Old Firm game. And, again, we'll absolutely have a preview pod coming out later on in the week, looking ahead to the Old Firm on Sunday once we get past Slavia Prague on Thursday. In the build up to this game, now obviously this is in the shadow of Rangers winning 55, fans celebrating, gatherings in public, George Square outside of Ibrox, and the very hysterical political and media response to that. That seems to have led to a meeting between SFA, Scottish Government, police, Rangers and Celtic. And following this, there's been a number of stay-at-home messages coming from the club, from Stephen Gerrard, from various people. Tavernier did a video that was tweeted out from the Rangers account, asking fans to stay at home. And this seems to be a very, very concerted message. And it seems that this is probably one of the conditions of the game going ahead, is that both clubs actively encourage their fans to stay at home. David, is this really necessary? Do you think that maybe this is all a bit overkill, and were fans ever really going to turn up to Parkhead on Sunday?
I don't think that fans necessarily would have. I think, given the events of the past week, if anything, it may well have prompted people to actually turn up to rub Celtic's fans' faces in it, if they're going to turn up to, in inverted commas, defend their stadium. I think, it's that political fallout during the week is very, very much a microcosm of a certain aspect of Scottish society, and it's quite a sad thing to look on it. It's not unsurprising. I think it's unnecessarily inflamed a situation which didn't need to get out of hand in the way that it did. I think I cast my mind back to last Saturday, and I seem to recall Charles Patterson reporting for Sky Sports News outside of Ibrox, categorically stating that that the tannoy system at Ibrox was being used to ask Rangers fans to disperse from outside the main stand. That seems to have been completely airbrushed from history by various politicians, various members or representatives of public services by way of the police. And this old firm kind of solidarity in terms of a public message has been brought about largely because of, shall we say, Rangers being used as a political punchback, wrongly in my opinion. The fact that the chairman had to write to the First Minister to question some of the stuff that is taking place in Parliament at the start of last week there says it all really, Ross. And I just hope that the fans have managed to get that pent up release out of their system. I'm sure they have. I think that the scenes in George Square have went a long way to exercising the demons, if you like. And let's not forget, the numbers that were in George Square and outside Ibrox could have been tenfold with the amount of Rangers supporters who could have turned up. And that's not to absolve any Rangers supporters who, perhaps their judgment was maybe brought into question about, the risks involved. But yeah, the fact that football managers have got to come out and be politicians in this situation, it's a sad thing. And when you think that, thankfully, these league games only come up 4 times a season. Obviously, they can be added to with cup games, but yeah, I'm sure that Stevie and the players could do without being political mouthpieces that are being sadly have to be used in order to diffuse a potential powder keg situation and further political and headache, if you like. It's I'd rather just get the game out the road and move on, to be honest with you, Ross.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I don't think that the club can be doing anything more than they currently are. I mean, I don't think there was much more that the club could have done last weekend. As you say, captured live on Sky that the tannoy's telling folk to go home. Messages put out by the club, by the manager, saying that people need to be safe, respect the regulations, but that's all, as you say, conveniently forgotten. Frankie, just as a last word on this, because we don't like to stray into the political on this forum, but what did you make of Rangers, I don't know if we'd say leaking, but making publicly available the correspondence that Mr. Park sent to Nicola Sturgeon, responding to the allegations that Rangers hadn't done enough last week?
I think we're quite well within our rights to reply publicly to what they were saying. I mean, Sturgeon and Swinney, they've got their soapbox every day on TV at the minute when it comes to COVID, and time after time they say it's COVID only that they're there to talk about, and time after time other issues seem to crop up. I mean, I would call myself a floating voter. I'm from, my granddad, both my granddads were miners, Scottish Labour guys. I'd imagine that's probably the case for most of our listeners. Nowadays, Labour are absolutely hopeless in Scotland. The SNP, I doubt I could ever vote for, and the Conservative Party is hardly my background either. So I didn't have any bias when it comes to criticising politicians, and I can't stand these people. I do not understand why they just can't play stuff with a straight bat. I mean, what happened last weekend? Okay, didn't matter if Rangers won the league this season or Celtic won the league. The fans were going to come out in their thousands to celebrate, whether it was 10 in a row or the 55th title. So the government and the police, they had fair warning of this. Okay, a lot of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people didn't go, and that's to their credit. The people that did go shouldn't have done it. There's nothing wrong with saying that. I'm not losing staunch points for saying that. However, it was going to happen, and I wouldn't criticise anybody for doing it. If I was 20 years old and lived in Glasgow, I would have been at Ibrox last weekend or George Square. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite about it. And that's what these politicians are, the hypocrites. Because if it was Black Lives Matters the year before, independence marches the year before, what happened in London at the weekend with that lady that was sadly murdered. These things happen, these marches, these protests happen, and they shouldn't happen under the current guidance, and that's absolutely fine. But to try and suggest that they didn't have any warning or couldn't have planned for this is just complete and utter lies and mischief making. And and when it comes to the Scottish Government, clearly they are just looking for a deflection in terms of the salmon debate and other stuff that's happening with the SNP at the minute, and it was just a squirrel for them to point elsewhere for the media to look at. And I was glad that Rangers went to Peter Adam Smith at ITV, because he is one Scottish journalist. Okay, he reports for the network as opposed to Scottish television, but he's one journalist that doesn't shirk from asking the questions that need to be asked, and he did that last week. He's neutral, he's not biased, he's a Rangers fan by all accounts, but at the same time he's not afraid to criticise Rangers, and he did that as well. However, he was quite right. He asked what more can Rangers do, and this was the same for the Celtic game coming up this weekend. The clubs can only do so much. For the Justice Minister to come out during the week and tweet and say, well, we might need to cancel this game, or we might need to move this game because some fans might come out and cause trouble. I cannot believe what I was hearing or what I was reading for this guy. He's in charge. If he's got intelligence that there's going to be issues, deal with it. It's not for the club or the clubs to deal with that. They can try their best. Rangers have done it, Celtic have done it, Kennedy came out, Gerrard came out, Tavernier came out, and I didn't anticipate very many fans going to Parkhead on Sunday for either side. I mean, there's no reason for our supporters to go now. We've done our celebrating. Hopefully we'll win on Sunday. There might be some fans think I'm going to go along and celebrate that, or I'm going to go along and try some banter. I don't think you'll get away with that. They've put these fences up again. Let's not forget they've had these fences up for a while for Celtic fans congregating in their hundreds to throw fences at police. And I can't remember very much being said about that at the time. So I can only echo what their captain and their manager says and what our club's saying now. Don't go along. There isn't any point. We've won the league. Let's take the moral high ground now. Let's look after each other. Let's be safe. There's people dying for this thing. When I was talking about one of my friends off air, their parent died, and it is happening out there, so you've got to look after yourselves. We've still got this trophy to lift at some point. We've still got European games to play. Let's not put anything like that at risk. Let's not allow our manager and our players to have to take their eye off the ball in that respect by having to deal with political stuff that the politicians should be dealing with. We've won the league this season. We're the Scottish champions, and let's go on and do as much as we can in Europe and not get criticised in the media for stuff that we can now take responsibility ourselves for.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, isn't it? Is looking forward to what else is to come in the next few months. Lifting the trophy, probably the Scottish Cup at some point, European ties ahead. I'm not saying that Ibrox is going to be open for 50,000 folk to come and watch all of these things, but England down here, we're talking about 20,000 fans to watch the FA Cup final. We're talking about people going to watch the snooker again as a test event. We're talking about the European Championships being open fully for fans to watch the games. And it feels like the Scottish Government or the media or the police, the authorities, whoever it is waiting for an opportunity to shut this down and blame it on Rangers. Because my opinion is that this is what they wanted to happen. Once it became apparent that Rangers were winning the league, we can't stop Rangers winning the league, but at least we can criticise the way in which they celebrate it, which is why Rangers try and open correspondence with the Scottish Government at the end of 2020, and it's ignored. And there's meetings, and it's not followed up. And Hamza says, right, let me check with the police and get back to you, and he never gets back to you, because in my opinion, this is what they wanted to happen, was let the Rangers fans come out in their numbers, enjoy their night, get as many photos of a damaged bench in George Square as you can, and pillier them for it afterwards, because we can't stop them winning the league, but at least we can criticise the manner in which they celebrate it. And with everything that's to come, whether it's Scottish Cup, European games, lifting the trophy, you feel that the people in charge are waiting for an opportunity to shut this down and blame it on us and say, no, you couldn't be trusted, so we won't let you in to watch this, we won't let you in to watch that. It'll be 20% capacity at the start of next season because you couldn't be trusted last year. And that's a really, really sad state of affairs. But like you say, the club have done everything they can. It's on record, the number of stay-at-home messages have been put out. If people want to go along, people will go along, whether that's for a bit of banter or to celebrate the game or whatever. If folk are going to do that, folk are going to do that. There's nothing that the club can do. And that's that's where we are. Right, gents, we've ticked over the hour, so I think it's about time that I wrap that up there. I want to say, as always, a massive thank you to David and to Frankie for giving up their evening tonight and joining me on the show. Thanks to everyone as well on the YouTube stream who's got involved and given up their Sunday nights to join us. The show will be back hopefully on Wednesday with a wee preview ahead of the Slavia Prague game, and then of course next Sunday as we delve into the fallout of the Old Firm over at Parkhead. Until then, please do head over to the website at www.gersnet.co.uk. Check out the articles, check out the forum as well, where you can find myself, David, and Frankie. All that's left for me to say is we will see you next time. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Stay safe and have a great week.